do a diabetic diet. We all should be doing that. It's simply eating healthy. So, you know, when you look at that, eating healthy still goes with the pump. So you can gain weight. This is one that actually goes in at an angle.
What is that?
A lot of the kids will use this because it goes at a 30-degree angle. There's also one that is a needle that stays in. And some kids, I got a physician in Virginia that's the only thing she will let the kids do. Why? Because it's almost impossible for any of these cannulas to kink, and they can kink. The downfall of a pump, anybody know the downfall of a pump?
Clogging.
Kink in the tube.
That's right, kinking a tube and you're not getting, so you can go into DKA faster because you're using a fast-acting insulin only. Now, that being said, you will not get there if you're doing your blood sugars. That's why it's important to do your blood sugars when you're on a pump. You should be doing them even if you're not on a pump, but you should pay particular attention to that. And that's because you don't have anything to buffer that insulin. Remember, if you're on Lantus or NPH, that's kind of like a long-acting insulin, so you got insulin there to buffer it. With this, you don't. But usually you will catch it because, you know, you're doing your blood sugars, especially with the sensors out there. Questions?
Do some people use Lantus and a pump?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say no. There's maybe a few, but not very many. I mean, when I say a few, I mean, I don't know.
No, no.
You know, somebody just asked me that last week, and I know there's something going around on some of the blogs, but it really, first of all, it's not FDA approved to be used in pumps, and it.
No, I think she's not Lance's in the pump, but
I wasn't asking
plus
in the
the
pump.
Oh, in addition to
Yeah,
the
at the
pump.
same
No.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, normally you don't. It kind of defeats the purpose of it. You know, and one thing, especially if you have, one thing people are afraid of course, is going low, right? And especially at night. And see, that's where you can take the pumps and adjust basal rates. You can adjust target ranges. You can actually do a lot of things to prevent that. You know, another question that was asked is, you know, how do you convert, you know, from, and like Dr. Sobel said, it's pretty much, you know, you're taking what your Lantus is and divide it by 24. Some people on Lantus twice daily even. I don't know how many people are doing that, but you just take the total units and kind of, what we really do is we take about 20% from that because the pump works more efficiently. So we take about 20% from that. Questions? Yes, sir.
Does this pump do the units in wholes or halves or what?
Good question. And that's where I think somebody had a question about, you know, relating to that. They do it in tenths of a unit. Right now, what you guys can do with the injection is basically either half units or either whole units. You know, we can actually go into 0.05 on a bolus, 0.025 on a basal. So we can be very, very small in the amount of insulin that we give, especially for kids that are on a small amount of insulin.
What are the limits for an Omnipod?
It's 0.05.
Okay.
Bolus and basal.
Thank you.
Questions? I'll have this stuff for you guys at the end, so feel free to come up with it.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanya Jackson. I'm the Diabetes Clinical Manager for Medtronic Diabetes. And thank you, Jerome, for doing most of the tubing and everything for me. Pretty much as everyone else has mentioned that the pumps have some of the same general operating features. When you're talking about having an internal calculator, we have the bolus wizard. When you're talking about having basal rates and your bolus factor, all of that is pretty much the same. One of the pumps, actually, our pump, which is called the Medtronic Paradigm 22 pump, is the pump that's currently available. But as of Monday, the 22nd, I don't know if you've seen that on the web pages yet, but we have the MiniMed Paradigm Real-Time Revel. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you're aware of is that with the Revel, we're also able to deliver that smaller basal rate, the 0.025, and the 0.05 bolus. But additionally, I think one of the things that Medtronic has, especially anywhere from, as someone mentioned, an 18-month-old to a person who's 70, 80 years old who plans to go on the pump, is that we have a wide variety of infusion sets. And being a pumper myself for about almost 19 years now, it does matter what type of infusion set you use at what time in your life when you're on an insulin pump. So we don't have a one-size-fit-all type of infusion set. We have several. This is the newest one called the Mio, and it's very similar to the one that Jerome just demonstrated to you. It's an all-in-one infusion set where you do the insertion. You don't have a separate inserter unit, but you do the insertion and then everything is thrown away. All of our sets are disconnect at the site. I'm going to lay them out here for you. We do have sets that are geared toward younger children, and I think that was mentioned as well. Sometimes you want an infusion set where the needle does stay in, and there are different reasons for that. With the little kids, the toddlers, sometimes when women are pregnant and they're wearing an infusion set, we want to ensure that there's no risk of the cannula bending at all, because once that cannula bends, you're not getting your insulin like you should be. So for kids that are younger, we have the Short T, which sometimes is also used in adults. So what you have here is you have two sites. You have one where the needle goes in and stays in, and then you have an extra loop called a safety loop. So that if something is pulled on the actual tubing, it won't pull out the infusion set itself, which I think is very important. I think someone mentioned infusion sets coming off or what have you. What I really like about the infusion sets, the ones that connect at the site, if it pulls out, guess what? Your insulin is still in your pump. You're not wasting any insulin, which I think is very important. If you just fill the 200, 300 reservoir and the thing pulls out, you're gonna be wasting. And maybe this is a personal thing, but as a person with diabetes, the last thing I want to do is waste my insulin. So what's good is that, I have like a 180-pound St. Bernard, and the first thing when I walk in the door, he likes to play. And so his big paw comes up like this and sometimes grab my tubing. If it comes out, I just take my quick set, put in the tubing, and then just reconnect my pump without having to kind of go through the whole process all over again. So those are just some of the technical aspects of the pump. After Monday the 22nd, we will no longer be shipping the Paradigm Medtronic Real-Time Pump. We will have the Revel pump. And I didn't bring it today because we're doing a national training on Monday. So if some of you already know which pump you're getting, just in case, just know that if your pump ships after Monday, it won't be this one, it will be the Revel. But some of the upgraded improvements in the Revel were the basal rates that we talked about, the bolus, the fact that we can do a 0.05 bolus, but also the continuous glucose monitoring. We are the only company that has it integrated in one system, which I think is pretty good. You're already walking around with a pump, so you don't want to have too many devices that you have to keep up with. But in our Revel pump, right now we have the graphs that are available. Also, we have the alarms, as someone mentioned, that when you're going low, you'll get an alarm. When you're going high, based on the numbers that you and your doctor come up with, how to program this, you'll know exactly what's happening. Now, Dr. Sobel talked a little bit, as I was standing in the hall, about CGMS really being a guide and how it works for some people, depending on what your expectations are. But we also know that there's a study that shows that you do have the ability to reduce your A1C when you're wearing continuous glucose monitoring. And even if that's not your goal, maybe your goal is just to know when your child is approaching a low blood sugar. which I think that's probably the biggest concern for most parents that have children with diabetes. So in the Revel, we will have predictive alarms. So not only will you get an alarm that will tell you you're below 80, but it will also predict, if you set it up that way, tell me when my child, 20 minutes before they get low. Sometimes it's better to control what they're eating too, you know, because sometimes you know, okay, I'm going to give them 15 to 20 carbs, but when they get to a certain point with the low blood sugar, they want you to continue to give them food, even though you know what's going to happen. In an hour, even less, they're going to be back up to 200 or 300. So you kind of find yourself riding this roller coaster. So just keep in mind also that with the CGM,